everyone, and welcome to This Week in Pro Wrestling History. I'm Noelle LaGrasso. I'm here with former WWE, WCW, ECW, TNA, your mother's ass superstar, Big Vito LaGrasso. How are you today?
Doing great. Great to be here with the Big Vito brand live, baby live. Hope everybody's doing fabulous, looking good, feeling good. Here with my Kung Fu robe on, being that, that marvelous man whore that I am, You know how it goes.
Well, we're going to be talking about dojos. So I guess this is like appropriate
dojo
attire. And you notice that I introduced you. I asked how you were doing. I'm doing banter because last week you bit my head off for not bantering with you. So I'm bantering.
Well, it's good because you know what? It is the Big Vito brand.
No, this is the Russo brand.
No, it's the Big Vito brand.
This is the Russo brand.
Who?
And he likes me better than you.
Who?
Vince.
Who?
Vinny.
Who?
Vince Russo. Vince.
Don't know.
From New York.
Don't know.
Says bro all
Who
the time.
broke him in?
I know who broke you in. His baseball bat across the back of your head.
Hi. I know how. Okay, guys.
I'm using my professional name, Noelle LaGrasso, Mrs. Big Vito. How's that? All right, let's get to the topic. Are you ready to be professionals? Do you have anything you want to show anybody in the background? Last week it was a TV. Are you showing anything off? Or you got a ceiling fan? Oh, you got a couch back there. There's a couch.
Oh, you're looking good. I don't mean to hear it.
All right. So, Vito, this week we are going. Shoot, I have my wrong subject list up. I don't think they want to hear about.
Get your stuff together, girl. Get your stuff together. You're sitting next to the BIGV.
Yawn, sigh, topic. April 18th, 2007. Where were you April 18th, 2007? I have no idea. But
April 18th, 2007.
That was a joke. That you don't have to answer.
I was still in the WWE.
Okay, well, here is what we're going to be discussing. April 7th, 2007, WWE end their developmental relationship with Deep South Wrestling. This leads to talent being reassigned to OVW, then a year later, FCW, because they ended their relationship with OVW. And then this leads to the development of the Performance Center. So we're going to talk a little bit about your memories of Deep South Wrestling, winning Deep South heavyweight title, different developmental systems you've been in, young stars you've encountered, things of that nature. And that's what we're going to discuss this week in pro wrestling history. So are you ready to get started here?
You just forgot what Big Vito was.
With Big here we go. Okay. So, boy, I never met anybody in my life that loved themselves as much as you. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to
I'm waiting.
Okay, well, I'm looking at you going like this.
Go ahead, girl.
All right. So to just start there. Now I'm tongue-tied. It must be your gleaming smile.
You're nervous, baby. You're nervous.
No, yeah. Okay.
Ease up on the pressure, baby.
Oh, God.
Close the door. I know what you've been waiting for.
Okay, no more. No more. We're not doing this. I'll end the show now. Thanks for joining us this week. Now, Vito.
We'll start already. You've been,
Well, you're over here doing like your best like dork impression. Yeah. J-Bo. Okay. So this week I want to discuss developmental systems, and I want to discuss that a little bit with you right now. Can you give us basically what a definition is of a developmental system from like what it meant to you guys in the 90s as opposed to like the Performance Center today? What would be the difference, the definition of that?
Well, I mean, developmental territories is where you went to go learn out in a crowd, and you learned your craft live. Being in a developmental institution or a development center, that's where you're in a controlled environment and a structured environment where they teach you ABC, all the alphabet, but they don't give you that live vibe or that live feeling to make it out there on a daily basis. You can only teach somebody so much in a developmental program.
Right. And they use NXT as part of their developmental now, but now it's become more of a brand onto itself as opposed to what it originally was just like a Deep South or an OVW or an FCW. So let's go a little bit back. Now, you were at the power plant
Right.
That WCW had a power plant in Georgia where they developed stars and gave people tryouts. Did you pay for your tryouts? Some people paid $200 for their tryout.
I never
Did you know
paid
that?
for a tryout. I was always invited to come down. You know, people, you got to remember that, you know, I got my training when I was on the road. Like, I started out as a rookie, and my first TV match was actually WCW against Beautiful Bobby Eaton. And from there, I went to the WWF, and it was a gentleman by the name of Sonny Blaze, who was running the developmental territory. And I had been doing shows with him on Tommy Jeanette shows with Johnny Rods. And he asked me if I wanted to come up and do the shows. And that's how I started doing developmental.
Okay, so you were invited to go to the power plant. You didn't pay the $200 fee that some people got stuck with. Some people really did pay a $200 fee to go and do basically a boot camp. But from what everybody says about the power plant, that was pretty much a boot camp, right?
Well, you got to remember something. I was treated very different when I went to the power plant. I got invited there in 1995. Pez Watley, Terry Taylor, a lot of guys in there knew of me when I came in the power plant. I had just finished the Japan tour. I was in Santo Domingo. I was just finished Memphis, Tennessee. So I was in all the territories, and then I got a call to go up to the power plant, and they didn't treat me as a boot or a recruit. They treated me as a worker. And they didn't make me do all the hard drills. I did participate in some drills, but not like all the new guys. And then when I was in there, it was, all right, Vito, let's see what you could do. And I went out there, I wrestled, I did my thing. And, it was a good place to get some experience, and at the end of the camp, I was offered more TV deals, and I turned it down. I said, that's what I have with the WWF. That's not what I'm looking for.
Now, Gang, you were probably like more in a position that Gangrel was in when he went to the old WWF dojos, where he was already a veteran. He had already been in for about 10 years by the time he had gotten there. And when he was at the camp, he thought that he didn't make it because they kept asking him what he thought of different guys. But they really asked that because a lot of the other guys were so inexperienced. He was experienced. They already had plans to make him an offer. They just wanted to see what he thought of the younger talent while he was there. So you were probably like a very similar scenario to that.
Well, I guess, it's different because when you're coming from New York and you're going down south, it's a different mentality, and they don't like New Yorkers, so Southerners. But people forget that I was friends with Booker T and Stevie Ray, and Booker T actually drove me every day to the power plant and, took care of me while I was down there. So, I mean, it was a good learning experience.
Are you the third member of Harlem Heat?
Could be.
I'm going to ask Stevie Ray. I'm going to ask him today because I already know Animal told me you're the third member of the Road Warriors. But is it possible you could be in 2 Hall of Fame tag teams and you're like, the mysterious member of the Beatles almost?
Yeah, well, it happens.
Stevie Ray, if you're watching this, I'm asking. Is Vito part of Harlem Heat? I mean, he did live in the Bronx. That's very close.
Everybody knew there was a 6 Backstreet Boys, hey. You
are also the actual 4th member of 3 Count, and people don't know that either.
People don't know that.
That's legit. Shane Helms will tell you that Vito begged for his own green circle, and they gave it to Tank Abbott instead of him.
It's terrible. It still bothers me today.
He still watches 3 Count.
I'm a fan.
Huge fan. If they come to town, I'm buying them tickets. Just now, boys. We'll be there front row. So anyway, I totally trailed off. I apologize. You had a pretty interesting encounter with a very, very, very young Big Show at the power plant. Can we talk about this a little bit?
Well, here I come. I had just gotten out of, I was just coming back from, like I said, from Japan. I was actually in Malaysia before that. And
I didn't know you went to Malaysia.
Yeah, went to Malaysia in 1995, 96. Yeah. And there I am, and the Big Show goes to lock up me. He was brand new. He could have been in there a little bit of a time. And he locks up with me and punches me right in the face. I shoved him as hard as I could. And I told him, I said, you stupid motherfucker, who the fuck do you think you're pushing here? And, everybody just looked at me like I had 3 heads. And Paul Orndorff stood there and he looked, and the guy, Giant Reese, and everybody was like, whoa, way to come in somebody else's house and push the biggest guy back and you don't want to fight.
Paul Orndorff thought you were nuts.
He thought I was great. He loved it.
I know, he loved it.
He loved it because I had a set of balls back then. It didn't matter how big you were, how tough you were, and especially big. And I mean,
yeah, you're not even a small guy, but you definitely have. If you're bigger than me, I'm getting a syndrome. You do have that. Like, you will, if somebody's bigger than you, you want to see how hard they're going to fall.
It wasn't even. It was just a matter of just back then when you were a veteran, you just didn't put. I was taught and I wrestled the best already, so I was tutored and mentored, and I was groomed to a certain point. I'm not saying I was an all-pro, but I had more experience in the ring than most guys who had 4 years in the business. So you're talking about, going to the WCW plant, and then right after that, what people don't realize is that I had to try out at WWE or the WWF in '96.
And we're going to get into that too, because you definitely made your way around all of the basic developmentals that were then, and yeah, pretty much. So WWE used to have dojos before they had a performance center, before they had these relationships with other camps or what have you. They would have dojos, and a lot of times they would be like through Killer Kowalski. He hosted a lot of live shows that they would put the dojo people on, like the Hardy Boys used to do Killer Kowalski shows in the dojo. So you went in 1996 to one of these dojos, right? Was that the year you went to the?
I believe it was 1996. And
you had pretty much an all-star cast there, huh?
Well, at that time there was Droz. Droz was the only one there with Tom Pritchard, and I came in, and Tom Pritchard knew who I was. He knew me from down south, and I came in, and I wrestled with Droz and went back and forth with him, and then I wrestled Tom Pritchard. I hustled Tom Pritchard. My mentality was to be the best in the ring and just go and just do everything. So, on that note, don't beat up the trainer, don't outperform.
I was going to say, do you think that was a mistake to say, hey, Dr. Tom, I'm going to wrestle you into the ground?
No, but I didn't say that. What it was is I wanted to impress and show that I could wrestle. I wasn't being disrespectful. So when you're that young, and then there's the pedigree that you don't know, the respect level of wrestling, the head trainer in his house, and you think that if you could wrestle with them, and my mentality was I was just as good as everybody else, or better. I was better than everybody else at that time, that I could wrestle and not be scolded for it. And it was just a strange time because Vince Russo was making his way up the ranks, and Vince Russo had a lot of heat in the office, and he brought me in and he tried to get me a job, and I had already worked for the WWF already, and
people always say that Vince got you a job, but you had already worked for the WWE. It was actually Vince working there that stopped you from getting a job there. So to get there, you had to work like 10 times as hard, and it's not him putting himself over. This is a true story. People didn't like Vince because they thought of Vince as outside. He wasn't a Southern guy. He wasn't a wrestling guy per se. They thought of him kind of as the magazine guy.
Right. And then you know what? And then, at that time, if you remember, guys, it was Jim Ross, it was Cornette, it was Pritchard, it was Patterson, it was...
there was a lot of Southern people.
There was a lot of guys who went to Vince's house and was writing TV. And then once Vince got in there, one by one, Vince didn't want these guys to come anymore. Vince wanted to write TV with Vince Russo. So the way to get back at Vince Russo was to say, now they all knew I came in. And when Vince got the report and they said that I sucked, I was terrible, go home. I said, Vince, what are you talking about? I said, I freaking did great. They told me I did great. I wrestled with Droz, I wrestled with Pritchard. I said, how could you tell me I did terrible? And then I sucked. Well,
and then they said it was a shot at him because you two were BFFs and they knew it. So it was a shot at him to take a shot at Vito. They couldn't do anything to Russo, so they took a shot at Vito. And we'll talk about that another time because that will be a whole other episode of this lovely show that we're doing. But your time, let's go a little further back. Like, you trained at Johnny Rod's, which was like almost a dojo in itself. Now, tell everybody who you trained with at Johnny Rod's and what that was like there.
Well, we probably have the best training class that anybody ever had. You had Mondo Clean at the time, who wrestled as
Damien Demento.
You had Big Sweet William, who's Bill DeMott. You had Taz, you had Dreamer, you had Devon, you had myself. Angel was after that crew. You had Larry DeGarris. You had guys you had S.D. Jones, who was Johnny Rod's first student, who's already in the WWF, which a lot of people don't know. But you talk about a star-studded class that came out of that group. And that group became a great group of wrestlers who knew how to wrestle, knew how to shoot, knew how to take care of everybody. And you know what? I mean, they made you earn it. When I broke in there, Damien Demento and Bill DeMott weren't easy on me, and Taz and Dreamer and and Devon was kind of like we were starting out. I think Devon was after me, if I'm not mistaken, and it was tough, and they made you earn it, and they tried to make you quit. And then once you learned how to play and you would fight back and wrestle them back, they didn't want to play with you no more because they knew they couldn't out-hustle you.
This kind of leads in. You mentioned some names that are associated with developmental and training in your discussion right there. And some of the I want to say some of the reason things have gotten so officey hands-on with the training and with the developmental, because it was very, very different back in the day than having their own performance center, was the accusations of hazing and violence and things of that nature towards trainees. When you were in these power plants, Johnny Rod's, did you consider that hazing, or it was just getting broken into the business?
They wanted to see how tough you were, and if you wanted it, you had to earn your keep. And if you could make it through the training and you could stick with it, then you knew you can stay. If you were going to cry and bitch and moan and complain and see that, they would eat you alive. Are you okay? It's the code. Are you okay? Is everything all right? Are you hurt today? No. Okay, good. I'll see you tomorrow. And when it comes to hazing, guys, and you talk about, I'll bring up Bill DeMott for a second, and Bill and I go way back. Bill helped me get to Memphis. The people don't know, he helped me get my plane ticket to go because he had extra miles because he was doing Puerto Rico. Me and Bill were in All-Star Wrestling together. So it was a lot of things, but like when you talk about, everybody talks about Bill DeMott as being a hard trainer. It's not supposed to be easy. Was he accused of adding his own flavor to what his repertoire of training was? He probably did. Were the methods of his training valued and good to groom you to be a rugged, tough, mechanically, basically trained wrestler? Yes, because that's how you trained. We trained from the same school. If we got Taz and Dreamer and Bill and Devon, and Phil and Larry DeGarris, if we got all together, we already know we have our bags. We'd stretch, we'd do our squats, and everybody get outside the ring, and we're going. Do you know what I mean?
Did any of that training involve a jelly donut? Just asking, out of curiosity. No butts and jelly donuts in your training. I was just asking.
No, there was
for entertainment purposes.
No, guys, it was serious business back then, and not everybody could make it. And when you came up that way, plus everybody forgets, I was not only training in Johnny Rod's 4 times a week, I was doing independent shows, and I was doing WWF house shows and TVs. So look at all the wrestling I went through in my first 3 years alone. Before, and that's including going to Japan, going to Puerto Rico, going to Memphis, going to San Domingo, going here, going there. That's a lot for the first years of your business. And getting your Ribera jacket was the most important thing in your world. Wanted to make it to Japan, wanted to make it to Ribera's, get your jacket. You did something. That was the goal.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question, and this is another developmental area. Since you had been in and out and around the WWE since the early '90s, did you spend any time at OVW?
Ohio Valley Wrestling, yes. When I was under contract for the WWE, I used to go. I was the only guy in the WWE. When off, I would go from Deep South, get on a plane, go down to OVW, just to train and keep myself sharp. I did not stay home and rest on my laurels and just sit there and collect a check. I went to work and I kept my game good. I was given that privilege to go to these places and upkeep my skill. That's what makes a good pro, is when you practice and you keep up. Not everybody has that pedigree. Not everybody thinks like Vito LaGrasso. Not everybody was brought up like Vito LaGrasso.
Do you know the only other person I know that would go back and forth to Deep South? You'll never believe it when I tell you.
Okay.
Nunzio.
Yeah.
Same mentality, same error, same coming up in the same error.
You know, guys, is that
person.
I mean, it's not, when you talk about wrestling, it wasn't supposed to be easy. It's just like being a baseball player. Not everybody makes it. Not everybody could be that. A basketball player, I wanted to be a basketball player in the worst way. It wasn't meant to be.
So we're talking about Deep South Wrestling, and we're talking about basically the shutdown of the association with training federations, basically, and going into a single performance center. And Vito is going to talk right now, going to go into Deep South Wrestling and your time there. Now, you went to Deep South Wrestling. You originally went down in your dress, and then you tested a new gimmick. How did you go from wearing a dress in Deep South and taking the dress off in Deep South into the Muay Thai gimmick?
Well, when it was time for the dress to come off, Vince told me to pick a gimmick and go to work on it, give me some pictures, let me see how you look. I did it. I started training for the gimmick. I went down to Deep South, and I learned how to wrestle a different style of wrestling. I learned to wrestle as a Muay Thai fighter, doing different throws, doing different kicks, practicing Muay Thai 3 times a week, going home, and just keeping on that thing.
And you wrestled in bare feet for the first time.
Bare feet for the first time. And, bare feet, throwing kicks, that was tough, doing different things. And I got to be very good at it because I was agile, I was athletic, and I took it seriously. And I developed a new brand of wrestling for, Big Vito LaGrasso. I wasn't just a brawler now. I was doing a Muay Thai, karate.
Who did you train with to do your Muay Thai?
It was a gentleman named Maurice, who was a very good trainer. He was friends with Batista, and we used to train and do the boxing and the gloves and the kicks, and that's where I furthered my development.
And you and Batista worked at the Muay Thai together?
And that's why I learned how to be very good at doing that. And if you didn't practice at it, you just didn't go, okay, here's a Mong Kong, here's some MMA tights, here's this and that. And
what's a Mong Kong?
It's the round thing you wear around your head.
Mong Kong.
Mong Kong.
Got it. I know nothing about Muay Thai other than what he showed me.
So, I mean, when you talk about that aspect of it, and trying to develop a whole different repertoire of training, and for when, Mike Bucci and Steve Kern come down to TV, and they told me, you look great, and, the gimmick is good. He says, you ready to come up to TV? And I made a recommendation for me to come up to TV. And then the following week, I get my release. Something was wrong, something happened.
Do you think that the fans would have accepted the Muay Thai gimmick as opposed to the dress? Because in Deep South, you basically said, I have to stop wearing this dress. Wasn't this the promo you cut? I have to stop wearing my dress because people are blaming it on their losses. Isn't that kind of what the gimmick was? And then you had to come out. Do you think people on SmackDown, watching SmackDown, would have accepted that as a reason for you?
Absolutely, because when you're a fan favorite, whether you're a heel or a babyface, when you're a well-liked, popular wrestler, And the people see quality wrestling, they are fans. I was a very good, technically sound, quality wrestler. None of my game was, out there or questionable. Everything was solid. I was a good ring general, a good technician, good amateur wrestler. I was a good all-around wrestler. I can't even, explain it any more than that.
Do you think you would have made a better heel than a baby face? Because then the fans could have said, oh, you wore a dress and taunted you with that. And you're being a tough guy. And do you think that would have been maybe a better angle as opposed to a baby face?
I think that it could have been like I come back in this, in this karate thing. And it could have been like Vito took it serious. He took the dress off. Now he went back to his roots. And now he's doing this Street Fighter gimmick, which would have been a Street Fighter
like
gimmick.
Almost like the video game Street
like the
Fighter
video game.
Kind of.
So if you're talking about being a Street Fighter, which I was, I just took it to a different level with a different look. Now, just for say, if I would have had the beard and the sunglasses and all that kind of stuff back then, now you're talking a whole different ballgame. And now I come back with face hair, more rugged looking,
That would have probably really added to that gimmick.
It probably would have,
hair.
if I would have grew the, like the goatee with the, with the hair coming down and just have a nastier look. And then the way I used to do my karate, like the mafia kick or doing karate in the ring or doing something, it definitely would have added to it, especially with all the stuff I was doing.
Okay, so let's move in more to your run in Deep South. Now, you wrestled with Bradley J, who a lot of people may know from like TNA because he's Jay Bradley. He was Aiden O'Shea. He also wrestled for the WWE under Ryan Braddock. And he wrestles now in Noah, Japan under Jay Bradley. So he's still an active wrestler. You feuded with him for the heavyweight title.
Right.
You won the heavyweight title. You guys traded it. He won it back again. What led to you winning that title there in Deep South?
I think they wanted to change to bring the houses up down there and to draw people to the crowd. So when I came down there, Bill DeMott and Tom Pritchard and Jody Hamilton.
The assassin.
The assassin. Very great wrestler in his own right, a lot of knowledge. And they were looking to pop the house shows and pop the town. So they said, let's put the title on Vito. And I was honored to take the title. I was thrilled.
It's a long history to Deep South Wrestling. For those of you who don't know, it's been around since the 80s. Jody Hamilton started it in about the mid-80s. So there's been a ton of big-name wrestlers through that have been Deep South heavyweight champion, and you've been one of them.
Another piece of wrestling history, guys. I've been a part of a lot of wrestling history. When you go in the record books and you see things, you're going to see Skullbound Crush. You're going to see Big Vito. You're going to see Vito. You're going to see a lot of my name because I am part of a lot of history. I've done a lot of wrestling. I might not have the glitz and the glory of some of the special wrestlers like a Steve Austin or Kurt Angle or Hulk Hogan or the Macho Man. But those guys like Macho, Hogan, a DDP, a Dusty Rhodes, a Ric Flair, a Luger, all came from the same territory type places and wrestled in the same kind of concept. And for a New York guy to be wrestling, in Southern style wrestling, that's pretty cool because you get to see a different style. You get to see different. When I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and I was wrestling there at Skullbound Crush, I used to tag matches with the Rock and Roll Express. I used to wrestle against the Moondogs, and they were still wrestling, moving around and still in their heyday. Guys like the Dream Machine or Boogie Woogie or Tommy Rich, Eddie Gilbert. That's a star-studded crowd. And, when you talk about Southern wrestling, Jerry Lawler, Brian Christopher, a Spellbinder, PG-13, Wolfie and Jamie, which was another tag team that came from there.
On a future episode, we're going to go into Vito's stories from Memphis because they're ridiculous.
But you guys,
you're just to interrupt. You're going to rack up some of those who Vito slept with points if you're playing bingo along with us and you're marking it off when you get to Memphis, just so you're aware. Just so you're aware.
Talking about that, like the Southern style wrestling and how you broke in and where you got your knowledge from. Those guys were instrumental. Another guy I learned from, and the guy I got my punch from, who I asked permission, Buddy Landell. One of the best punches was him and beautiful Bobby Eaton, who had the best punches. And I said, I gotta have a punch.
Bobby
like that.
Eaton had the best punch I've
So
ever seen.
if you notice that me, Buddy Landell, beautiful Bobby Eaton, Big Vito threw the same type of punch, and Buddy Landell and I was sharing a room and sharing an apartment when he was in Puerto Rico. And I asked permission, Buddy, do you mind if I use your punch? Because I love it. And I always wanted to do that. He says, go ahead, Vito. He says, just, when you do it, make sure you do it right. And I started doing it, and I was really good at throwing the regular punch, without stamping your foot like a lot of guys and throwing punches. I had a great punch. And if you remember the old style where you grab your hair, come, bang, and then when you go back and forth at being mechanical like that, I used to love stuff like that.
Buddy Landell is like incredibly underrated by people. Like if you want to actually spend the night watching good wrestling, YouTube Buddy Landell. You won't find too many bad matches if you look for Buddy Landell.
A guy like Buddy Landell, he's a guy who's Eddie used to get, he's doing the Ric Flair gimmick. He used to steal this, And
he's the nature boy.
And another guy who's, now I'm talking about underrated. Talk about Buddy Landell, Tommy Rich, talk about Terry Taylor. And they're in the same class with Southern wrestlers.
Eddie Gilbert.
Eddie Gilbert. As great as Eddie Gilbert was in Memphis history, and they don't put him up there with all the greats.
There'd be no ECW if there was no Eddie Gilbert. A lot of people don't realize that he played a King of Philadelphia gimmick, which kicked off ECW, big ECW. A lot of people don't know that.
I was down there. I went down there when Bill DeMott was wrestling for them, and we went to see Eddie about joining ECW back then.
Yeah, so you've had a lot of touches to, different times in wrestling. That's why we do the show. A lot of people don't realize how much you've actually been a part of. And they'll say, oh, Vito's putting himself over, but it's a true story. It really is. I mean, who could be in the Road Warriors and Harlem Heat at the same time? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, come on,
But guys, when people say I put myself over, it's not putting myself over. I was given the opportunity to be in certain places in wrestling that I earned. Nobody gave me the opportunity. I had to work to get to those points. And back then, you had to be accepted to be allowed to play in their playpen. And if you weren't allowed to play in the playpen, they exonerated you. Say, okay, here's the cutoff. You're a jobber. I was never treated like that. So like when people say, oh, Vito this and Vito that,
they say you overvalue your importance. But the thing is the time that you were in wrestling is such a long span of time where wrestling was very, very important, and many changes happened within the business in the time that Vito wrestled. There weren't too many people that were on that building all the way up level to where he is. He almost was it was a fortunate but an unfortunate position, because you had people like Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man and that class of people still wrestling, holding people that were in the mid card that normally would have been moved up higher down, accepting big contracts and keeping them here. He had a glass ceiling, just like a lot of the people that we can go through and say, people like Shane Helms, people, on that level. I mean, these are people that, yeah, they worked. They were the mid card, but you start somewhere and you move up. When you have people that won't move on, there's nowhere to move up in the card.
Guys, you forget a group of guys, talented guys who were mid carders. Rey Mysterio was a mid-card who grew up. Billy Kidman. Where do you think Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, where do you think they'll come? Chris Jericho left WCW to become a star in the WWE.
All mid-card, though.
Right.
All mid-card.
All these guys with all this great talent. And if you guys remember, I got to be in there with Terry Funk. I was in there with Kevin Nash. I was in there with Scott Steiner. I was in there with Booker T. I was in there with all the Goldberg.
Hogan. Hogan.
You know what I mean? Luger, Flair.
Bret Hart.
You talking WCW, and here I am making my way. Just this past week was the anniversary of me becoming tag team champion for the first time, And
that's not like today where belts change hands a lot. In the early the early 2000s, late 90s, belts didn't change hands like they change hands now. People held titles for long spans of time, and there wasn't a lot of title changing going on. Look at William Regal and the TV title.
And, guys, when people say, Vince Russo gave you a job, he gave me the opportunity. He gave me the opportunity to wrestle in WCW. Does anybody know who gave me the opportunity to be tag team champion? Kevin Sullivan. And it was that
I feel like we're all on the defensive, and these poor people are there taking our.
No. But
we love you guys.
No. It's just that when people talk about wrestling and talk about Vince did this and Vince did that, Vince was having his own issues up at the office, and here I am. And when he left, I remember talking to Arn Anderson, and I think it was Kevin Sullivan, and I remember talking to Arn Anderson and Kevin Sullivan, and I was like, oh my God, Vince left. And they had to tell me. I didn't even know Vince left. And he said, Vito, don't worry about it. You're going to be okay.
Vito, you know what I say about all of this before we get back into our topic? If you have 8 kids in a family and somebody breaks mom's vase, everybody's going to blame it on the new guy. Everybody's going to blame it on the youngest. The youngest did it. And I think when WCW folded, everybody pointed at Vince, except it wasn't Vince's fault. He just was the new guy, the outside guy. He wasn't the one that had been there. He wasn't Dusty. He hadn't been there. He was the guy that they could go, oh, he did it. But now that we look through time, these are the things that we actually remember about WCW, which was when Vince was there.
But you know what, guys? When that happened, and I had been there, and I've been doing my job, and everybody liked Johnny and I, and we were doing good, and everybody knew I could wrestle. I've been around 10 years. You had the Bret Harts there. You had everybody there. Vito, you're going to be okay, man. Don't sweat it. And then when Kevin Sullivan came up to me that afternoon, I think he says, Vito, he says, we're going to put the titles on you. I says, what? He says, it's time for a change. You deserve it. He says, we're going to put the titles on you, you and Johnny. I said, I thanked him. I said, don't worry. I said, I won't let you down. He says, Vito, I know you won't. He says, I know you're going to work hard, and then, everything's going to be good. And just for the record, Johnny the Bull always says good things about me, and Johnny was raw, but I always protected Johnny the Bull because that was my job as a veteran. The night we lost the titles to the Harris brothers, they wanted Johnny to take the pin. I said, no. I said, it's wrong. I said, you have to give credibility to the titles, and if you don't pin me, it doesn't give credibility to the tag titles, and beating Johnny wasn't going to do anything for Johnny. They wanted to protect me. I said, I will take the pin because that's the way it's supposed to be. Just so all you marks and all you people know, that's the inside of wrestling. That's what wrestling, that's how you're built. That's what you're made of.
Let's get back to Deep South and Johnny was a developmental guy. So let's get back to Deep South since we trot off a little bit. So when you were in Deep South, you encountered a lot of people that are famous today or on their way up. And I want to ask you about some certain individuals, but when you were there, MVP was there. Heath Slater, The Miz, Angel Williams, Kofi Kingston was still doing that phony-ass Jamaican accent.
Wrestling television. You see, the past few weeks, I've been training in Jamaica. I've been running miles in the soft sand. I've been climbing the mountains of Jamaica. They are my friends now. But the mountain that I have to climb now is that it is a conquest to the Deep South Heavyweight Wrestling Championship, boy. And that is the mountain that we need to climb today. Starting today, and from this moment forward, I will stop at nothing because I've got the Jamaican spirit, the spirit of Kingston inside. And with the people behind me, and the Jamaican spirit and the heart of a Jamaican, I know that there's nothing that can stop me. For I will stop at nothing before getting the Deep South Heavyweight Championship, boy. Boom!
Natty was there. Harry was there. Harry Smith was there. Yes, because
I think so, yes.
Natty's husband was there, and Great Khali was in and out of there at that time. Did you encounter young Kenny Omega? Kenny Omega was there.
I believe so. I think he was in Ohio Valley. I don't think I wrestled with him, but I know he was down there. And you talk about a star-studded cast of people who came through developmental who are today's stars. Those guys had to earn it. They went through the Bill DeMott's training program, and I bet you every one of them would thank Bill today and say, if it wasn't for that type of training, I would not be where I am today.
Luke Gallows was there as the freaking deacon. Do you remember that? He did the crazy gimmick there. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, certain people in Deep South were built up very, very big, and they never really either made the jump or they failed once they made the jump to developmental. One of those people I'd like to point out, because you did something with him and he went to SmackDown, was Palmer Cannon. Do you remember him? Mm-hmm. He's the one that he played basically like the TV person that stopped all the stuff and changed everything around. He's the one that the boogeyman came out when you played Santa Claus at Armageddon.
Okay.
Remember him, the blonde kid, very big, very tall. They pushed him to the moon on Deep South television as he was playing a TV station owner, and all the women were falling, and he did wrestle. He was pushed like the next big thing. When he got up to TV, they never used him for anything other than that, and then he was gone. Can you explain to me why a little bit that happened, and why that happens to some people now, like an Enzo and Kaz, or to that level?
That has to do with the hazing and the breaking into business, seeing how tough you are and your mentality on the road and what you could take and what you can't take. He was the type of kid, and he was a good guy. All he wanted to do was wrestle. He didn't want to put up with any shenanigans. He just wanted to wrestle, go home. He just wasn't that type of guy. And when he got to the big league roster, they razzed him, they pushed him. He was going to leave a tour and go home, which I don't think people remember. And he just wasn't built for that part of the business. But being an in-ring talent, guy could do it. I mean, he was a good-looking kid. He could do his stuff.
He was good in the ring.
But he just didn't have that grit that they were talking about.
They did the same thing with The Miz, but The Miz hung in there, and now he's one of the biggest stars in the WWE. But you worked with him there as well, and you worked with him house shows.
I traveled with The Miz, and I used to tell him, just let it go, man. Just keep your head. You're doing good. And we used to have fun because I used to travel with the dress, and you used to get a kick out of it. But you know what? I always tell him, just keep your head, keep doing your thing, and you'll be fine. And not to say my words have helped him propel in the business or anything.
Don't put yourself over.
No. But what I'm saying is, when you have somebody to give you those words, and, make you realize that things don't have to be that bad, it's just like, some guys who I won't name their names, okay, but when you're on the road and you don't have enough money for a hotel and you notice that they're staying in the car, and I used to go out there and say, so what are you doing? This is all, you're trying to say. I said, bro, you got a whole slew of guys in there that I'd be more than happy to let you sleep on the floor, grab a mattress, grab a pillow. I said, get out of your car, go get a room. And I would tell you that I paid for a couple of rooms for guys, so they had a place. You know what I mean? Not that I was Rockefeller, but nobody deserves. You were on the road. You didn't need to be sleeping in your car.
But isn't that passing it on a little bit, because people did the same for you, and that's part of that whole learning and development is what teaching people. Okay, so maybe Vito bought. Well, not saying that you did, but maybe Vito bought Miz a room, so then Miz can go buy somebody a room the next round.
And that's what it's about. It's the words pass it on. Are the biggest, one of the first words you learn, the first phrase you learn in the wrestling business. If you can't pass it on, then what are you? You're not a pro. That's something that every wrestler should learn today. If you can't pass it on, you're not a pro. Those words ring true. If I could pass it on, everybody used to say Vito's a brute. Vito, no. But after I used to hustle you and make you sweat and make you wrestle, and maybe if I was rough with you, I'd say, hey man, how you doing? And they look at me like, what? Come on, man, let's go to my house. Let's go get something to eat. Come on, let's talk.
It's like you and me in the bedroom, and then you take me to dinner.
Right.
Which leads me to everybody's favorite part of the show, and the one I regret inventing the most. Vito, while you were in any of these developmental territories, did you have any encounters with anybody you'd like to share? Or I will accept, do you have another Ace of Spades story? I will accept either or. We're waiting.
Louisville. OVW.
OVW.
It was a.
I never heard this story. It doesn't involve Kenny Bolin.
It was a lady. There was a lady there who used to be in the crowd.
What did she look like?
She wasn't bad looking. She's a nice looking lady.
Louisville. Did she have teeth?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
And
did she shop at Kroger's?
No.
Okay.
So she was in the crowd, and she used to, come to the shows. I used to talk to her afterwards, and then, I, invited her to have a rendezvous or have a good time.
You're doing it again, and I think you're doing it on purpose.
I talked to this young lady about having a good time and having some adult fun.
No, you're doing it again. You're kayfabe in the audience.
I'm not kayfabe.
No, you
girl.
can't say things like, "Oh, we had rendezvous. Oh, we had a little love nest." I hate when you say that, by the way. That's cringy shit, guys.
No,
when
baby,
he says love nest, that's
baby,
cringy.
You know how it is, baby, when you got your kung fu robe on and you getting the shit on your Mac on and everything. When you go down to the shows, yo, girl, what's going on?
Did you ever fuck wearing a title belt?
No.
Would you like to?
No.
I'm just asking. These are questions.
Shit on the title belt where you can't sacred.
That's questions.
Then
People ask me questions.
I used to let the title belt watch. Well, you get in the title belt, used to go champ. Go champ. Yeah,
Do you ever hold two titles at the same time and put them on either side of the nightstand and let both of them watch, like a menage a title?
No, nothing like that.
Okay, I need to know now. Louisville. Honest, no kayfabe bullshit. People, write me if you hate that he does this, because I do. Don't love nest me. Don't. We had our rendezvous. We had our little midnight tryst. 2 ships that passed in the Hilton Inn. Like, I want to know, like, legit. Fucker. I want to know, like, legit. Give me the story legit. This isn't, people just fast forward your entire talk.
It was one of my regular bitches.
Talk like a regular person.
Which one do you want? You want this version with that version?
I want real Vito, no kayfabe, no Dusty Rhodes accent, none of that shit. Give me the legit Vito story about banging in Louisville, hitting the Louisville Slugger.
All right, banging in Louisville. There's a woman who used to come to the shows. She used to hang out there. I used to talk to her afterwards. So I invited her back to my room. I told her, "You want to have some adult fun?"
No.
But that's how I said it. What do you keep hitting me for?
Why would you say you want to have adult fun?
Because I don't know how you want me to say it.
I want you to say it like real people.
But this is what I used to say.
All right, go ahead. If that's what you used to say, I wouldn't sleep with you, but go ahead. Tell your story. Go ahead. This is people's favorite part of the show. Just say it.
Guys, my thing when I was on the road, you always had to be careful, okay? Because not everybody was cool, okay? You had to know women. You have to know pick the ones that didn't have a big mouth. So you always look in the crowd, or you look to see who's attractive, who's there, how long going to be in town. And if you could find that one who wasn't going to blab that they're banging Big Vito, they're doing stuff with Big Vito. That's how I used to operate. That's why you never heard me in any scandals or nothing. That's why all the ladies that I was friends with are still friends with me today. That's why all my ex-girlfriends are still friends with me today, except for the ones who robbed me. But I mean,
or stalk you.
Or stalk me. But for the most part, I was always that guy. I was just a smooth operator.
There's a science to it.
Yes.
It's like Scott Steiner.
You can't just have anybody to your room because you don't know what psycho's going to come there, what kind of drama they're going to bring. You want to have the least amount of drama.
You don't know if they'll steal your watch, too. That goes around a lot. Like those women there was a whole, I don't want to call them a name, but there was a whole thing where they were stealing guys' watches and wallets for a long time.
So, guys, and did I have a girl in a lot of towns? Yeah, because I was just that guy. I was just quiet about it. I didn't brag about it.
So you hooked up with the Louisville Slugger.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're marking this on your bingo card, he's got the Queen of Spades, another Queen of Spades, and he has a Louisville Slugger. So if you're keeping track, this is what he has. So this is a long-term hookup? Did you hook up in a strange place?
It was the hotel I was staying in. Come on by. I don't know, wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And, have some wine, leave. Talk to you later. Peace.
Lovely. Do you know what we're going to talk about next week?
Tell me.
All right, here we go. April 26, 2000, at a WCW Thunder taping in Syracuse, New York, David Arquette defeats Eric Bischoff to win the WCW heavyweight title. Now, Vito, you were actually there. And our friend Vince Russo was involved in the booking. Our friend David Arquette won the title, and Eric Bischoff isn't our friend. So we're going to talk about that event, the backstage vibe and atmosphere, also celebrities in wrestling, and of course, who you were sleeping with April 26, 2000, so people can continue to play Who Big Vito Fuck Bingo all next week, on This Week in Pro Wrestling History. Thank you for joining us.
Peace, guys.
Yeah. I feel like Big Vito. Yeah, I feel like Big Vito. Yeah, feel like Big Vito. Yeah. I said, I'm up next like I got the call from Vito. We not some average Joe, stay escaping from Leos. So call me Big Vito, I got a kick like a shotty. And like Ciroc, you're taking hot shots to the body. They had you in a dress, but you were still styling.